Hello and welcome to this YouTube video by Avon and Somerset Constabulary. My name is Christian and also with me today is my colleague Drew. We are Cyber Protect officers. We do exactly what we're doing right now, delivering presentations to help with online security and all things cyber. We deliver to many audiences, so we are reaching a wide number of people, and therefore the advice does tailor differently from one scenario to another. We also speak to individuals who have fallen victim to cybercrimes, provide them with advice and a level of understanding so they do not fall victim to future attacks. Overall, our aim is to deliver a more proactive response by actively getting the message out there, by hosting webinars, writing blogs, and engaging on social media, and basically reducing the amount of victims and reactive responses we have to give. I'm going to hand you over to my colleague Drew, who's going to start off this presentation with the safety concerns from a cyber perspective.
So the biggest safety concerns that we see from a cyber perspective are now shown on screen. You may not have heard of all of them or understand exactly what they entail. But the sad truth is that every single day, more and more children fall victim to these crimes. Our challenge is educating parents and children on each of them and sharing the measures that you can put in place to ensure that you're in the best possible position to defend yourselves. So there are far too many apps to sort of know exactly what they all do. New ones come out all of the time, and trying to maintain a continual watch on what they all do is simply not feasible. The emergence of these new apps and games, they make the internet feel vast and ever changing, but the reality is that there's only a limited number of functions that apps and games can have. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a few ways to make you feel more comfortable with these overwhelming number of apps. And what we're going to do is look at the common functionality that builds the foundations of all apps. So the National Crime Agency and the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Command, also known as CEOP, recommends using a simple technique of breaking down an app into its key functions of viewing, sharing, chatting, and friending, and then asking some questions in order to gain a better understanding of how that app works. So firstly, we need to take into account viewing. So what content can they see? Is it age appropriate? What filtering of privacy settings can be utilized? Unfortunately, it can be easy for children to come across inappropriate sexual violent content online. Most apps and games, but not all, of course, include privacy and security settings that allow you to control what content can be seen and shared. In addition, you've got parental controls and filters that can help manage a child's online activities and what they're exposed to. However, like most things, they're never totally fail-safe. What is vital, though, is open and ongoing conversations with young people about what they see online, and making sure that they can talk to an adult if they see anything online that upsets them. There is something that we need to consider called sharing, and that is the data transferred between devices. So the question we need to ask here is, what are they sharing, and who are they sharing it with? So a key part of our education with children is talking to them about what they share online. It's easy to share things online that we wouldn't do face to face. And it's also important to talk to children about safe sharing. So children of a primary school age are always encouraged to seek permissions whenever they share something online, especially if it's sharing a photo of another child in it. We also, want to encourage children to look out for others by not sharing inappropriate content in the first place. And then we've got chatting and friending, which we can sort of group together. Who are they friends with, and what are they sharing? Chatting and meeting new people on the internet can be fun and appealing for children. There's lots of apps and communities that can be both educational and supportive for them too. However, this opens up opportunities for adults to contact children online. No matter how old, how young the child is, if they're using a device that has the internet, it's important to talk to them about people who contact them online. Of course, some people generally just want to chat or be friends, but others may put pressure on a child to manipulate them. And then the final point I just want to make on this slide, and it will move us on to the next, is which apps should I be concerned about? So age restrictions make viewers aware of the type of content in a game or app. And it's important that parents and carers are educated on these age restrictions. Games and apps enable children to share an incredible amount of information about themselves, have conversations with their friends, and also potentially provide contact with people that they don't know. With this in mind, parents and carers should take age restrictions seriously. So from this icon of this app, you wouldn't be alone in thinking that this may or may not be an innocent kids game. In this case, the suggested age rating is 13 plus. So one worrying aspect is the discrepancy between icons and age ratings. So just because an app appears on a child's phone looks pretty safe, it's certainly worth taking a look at what that app actually does. So if we take a look at the Play Store info for the app, it does tell you that parental guidance is recommended. But here, the only information it shows is that users can interact and that location is shared. Again, this is pretty vague. If you look at the app in more detail, you can see that it's possible to share videos, stream video chat, and send direct private messages as well. This is simply just not obvious from the picture alone. If I had to guess, it would just be a game to catch bananas. Sadly, that this app can actually be exploited by a criminal who has contacted the child via the video chat, and they're offering bananas for them to remove their clothing on live stream, to which the child could then spend the bananas on a new cosmetic item in the app's virtual store. There is a very useful website called Common Sense Media, and we'll put that in the resources below. Essentially, it's an app that reviews by parents for parents to consider before allowing their child access to the content. Most games these days allow some degree of contact between players when played online. Again, this is something that can be easily exploited by abusers to make contact with children. It's a good way to befriend a child. If you heal their character or give them some ammunition, you can easily build up a friendship over a number of missions or games, or if you play as a team. Again, the attempt is made to move children over to one of the video streaming or photo sharing apps, and then of course it might lead up to real life meetups as well. I should point out that this isn't a limited list. It's all games that have an aspect of communication, like text chat or voice chat. Many children are just blissfully unaware of what's happening to them, as all they want is more bananas or the chance of getting a better skin so that they can show it off to their friends. Again, this is why we need good communication and education to and from the child. So games also have ratings for ages, but these tend to be on the based on the nature of the content, and if it's violent or graphic. But remember, obviously, if it's Peggy 3, it may still be possible to approach a child online in specific versions of the game. So again, it may require some thought before letting a 10-year-old loose on it. So we'll now take a look at sexting. So girls as young as 6 are sending sexually explicit texts during the coronavirus pandemic, and these so-called sexts typed out by children in the UK have risen 183% during lockdown compared to before measures were imposed, and that's with a 55% rise in sex drafted during normal school hours, and that's taken from Safe to Net. We need to consider the circumstances sexting happens in, and then obviously the consequences of hitting that send button. So the definition of sexting is the action or practice of sending a sexually explicit photograph or message via a mobile phone. If we take a look at the stat on screen, and that one's taken from Internet Matters Cyber Survey 2020, 17% of children 15 and over have sent a nude or sexual photograph of themselves. I should point out, of course, anyone under the age of 18 sending or possessing of an indecent image or video is breaking the law. Sometimes children might be put under pressure to either take pictures of themselves or pass on those taken by others. They may want to please a demanding boyfriend or girlfriend, or do simply what they think everyone else is doing. They may have even been talked into it by an adult that they've met online. As children have no control over how and where images and these messages might be shared online, sexting can, of course, leave them vulnerable to bullying, humiliation, and embarrassment, or possibly even to blackmail, which brings us on to the next slide where we will cover consequences. So this leads us on to sextortion, which is where sexting reaches another level, and that's when a person sends an image or a video which is then extorted for money, or they are threatened into making new images or videos. Sadly, there is an element of social currency in having images of a girl or boy in school, and so they may be shared to boost social standing. There is something called revenge porn as well, which is generally after a breakup and the ex has pictures which they post for revenge. Revenge porn, or the threat to share images, is also a crime. Obviously, when that victim is a minor, then that escalates the charges as well. These posts may be to a website or family or friends. So sextortion is where a threat is made to share the images unless the victim pays some money or makes newer videos for the abuser. In most cases, even if the ransom has been paid, there is nothing to stop the criminal asking for more money. And this is why the advice is to always not pay, purely because there is no guarantee that it will stop. The best advice is if you are not comfortable with sharing an image with the wider community, then simply don't share it at all. You can't rely on people's honesty, integrity, and maturity to handle it respectfully. Once it's out there, it's out there. Obviously, there's no control over individuals sharing an image or a video in a social circle. However, if you or your child or someone you know has become a victim of sextortion and it has been publicised, you can report it to a number of different places. Your first point of call should always be Action Fraud. Others include the CEOP. If you're worried about a child sending naked images or videos or sexual messages, you can visit the CEOP website. You can also report it to the Internet Watch Foundation. Make a report on the social media platform where the image or video has been shared, and then you can use NetAware in partnership with O2 to learn how to do this on different social networks, apps, and games. The last point I want to make on this slide is that if someone is using a bigger social media platform, usually their terms of service will be broken immediately, and that image will be flagged and removed.
Thanks, Drew. So now we're going to look at some measures you can take to reduce the risk you and your child have of actually becoming a victim. And yes, it unfortunately all does start with passwords. So how do you actually have a password that's not going to get you hacked? And the first thing to do is to actually have a complex password. And what a complex password does is confound something called a dictionary attack. Most people use some kind of word or name in their password, and by word I don't mean exile or combobulate. I mean dog or cat or perhaps Man United. So dictionary attacks look for common words and variations. So for example, monkey 123 in order to crack a password. So if you actually add complexity, it confounds those kinds of attacks. And children are as liable as anyone else to have online accounts hacked. Strong passwords are a must for any applications. Passphrases turn something you can remember into a complex password, like the one shown on the first bullet point. It has a random string, it has a capital in the middle, numbers in the middle, and it's quite long, 17 characters to be exact. And as you can see, we're not following that traditional password format by having a single word that probably means something to you, having a capital at the start, finishing it off with numbers, and usually an exclamation mark. It's actually pretty simple to figure out the passphrase if you see it, but the idea is to defend against that dictionary attack, and no dictionary attack is going to get that. The other advice being put forward by the NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Centre, is 3 random words. Again, this creates a single long word that won't appear in a dictionary attack. So have a go at picking a password. You can add symbols and numbers if required. I went with exiled 27 obsolete balloons. And I actually put that into a website known as howsecureismypassword.net and got 8 septillion years to crack. Now, I know I'm not going to be around, and neither will the offender. However, computer power does at least double every year. And therefore, because passwords exponentially increase in strength by every character, usually every few years, you need to add another character to your password. If we consider that cat and mouse analogy, where the cat is the computer power and the mouse is your password. And if you actually do struggle with remembering passwords, you can consider implementing a password manager to remember them for you. And on that note of password managers, these are basically just databases that work with your browser, for example, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Edge, to do that hard work for you in remembering those passwords. They can even make up super complex ones for you, which are pseudo-randomly generated. So when you open your browser, you'll have to log into your password manager. And yes, that password does have to be really good, but then the password manager will automatically enter your password when needed. A lot of the password managers work across your devices as long as it's installed. Most will also autofill form details, so names, addresses, phone numbers, etc. Some offer free cloud storage, and some even have a desktop client. But do your research on which one suits you best. Some of the big companies are shown on the slide. The other thing to note is regarding being vigilant with protecting your work credentials, and in particular where you share them. Signing up to websites online to get an extra voucher code is not obviously a good idea. This can leave that email being susceptible to a data breach, and due to the domain being leaked, it could allow for a more sophisticated criminal to make a more targeted approach with their attacks. Again, we also need to consider the information we are sharing on social media, especially with work-associated platforms like LinkedIn. Malicious actors will tend to use these for their reconnaissance missions before planning an attack. So another way to protect our credentials is via two-factor authentication. This just adds an extra layer of security which prevents someone from logging into your account even if they have the password. Two-factor authentication usually requires 2 things, something you know and something you have. There are others, but these are the most common ones. It works by sending a code to a device that you have in your possession after giving the correct password for the account, which is something you know. For example, your mobile phone or tablet, which has a SIM and a number, this ensures the account can only be accessed if the user has 2 pieces or factors to authenticate. And I cannot stress enough the importance of using this on your favorite websites and apps. Not only should you be doing this for your children's accounts, but your own too. It may add a little extra hassle in logging in, but remember, we want to make it as difficult as possible for a hacker to gain access to your account. Usually two-factor is only requested on new devices or browsers. Two-factor authentication will also send you notifications of IP address and the location of that device which is trying to gain access to the account. You can have a look at TwoFactorAuth.org, which is a very useful website that shows you how to enable two-factor and which sites support it. So we've covered the basics of how to defend against being hacked, but how can we protect our children from the content that is so readily available over the internet? All the main network providers allow you to set up some degree of parental control that manages website delivery through filtering domains. Typically, this would be nudity-related sites, gambling, dating, violence, etc. But unfortunately, in the modern era, there are many ways around this. If your child has a mobile phone or a tablet that allows 4G or 5G, then they could just simply bypass the settings with your home provider by switching to their mobile data plan. Make sure that you set up the appropriate settings for the mobile provider as well. Most network providers show information on how to do this under the frequently asked questions sections or their help sections, but there are some handy websites like How to Geek and LifeWire to assist in this as well. And even if the domains are being filtered, it may still be possible to get content returned to a device that is inappropriate via a search engine. What you might want to do is filter the searches made by the search engine. Options are to set up the search engine in a safe search mode or to use a search engine that is child friendly in the first place. Or if you're feeling quite techy, you can always log into the admin console of the router and set up a deny list, which will explicitly deny access to the content being requested. If you're going to attempt this, be sure to read up on guides on the internet first, such as LifeWire and How to Geek. And kid-friendly search engines are available, so you could simply make this the default browser on your PC and delete the Google search app from any phones and tablets and replace it with that kid-friendly search app. Obviously, you could just get to Google from Swiggle. The content filtering is probably only valid until 10 or 11, and you probably want the real Google at that point for school stuff and education. The other option is that they will simply just have the knowledge to search for Google themselves by then. However, Google does allow you to apply a safe search setting and lock it using an account. This search filter can help you block inappropriate or explicit images from Google search results. Like everything, it's never 100% accurate, but it will help avoid the most violent and adult content online. You are also able to minimize the number of results per page, reducing the chance of finding more inappropriate content. So within apps, you can generally set permissions so that strangers can't see or contact users. Within games, it may also be possible to prevent online player modes or prevent in-app purchases. I don't know of any that actually allow those permissions to be locked by a parent, so the user can't simply set them however they like. So you're really relying on the maturity of the child to understand the need to keep their settings controlled. There are a number of options for setting some kind of family control that work across devices where an adult is responsible for supervision. For instance, Google Family Link is an app that can be installed across Android devices and Chromebooks, but the parent's device can actually be an iPhone. The key bonus is that the Family Link prevents children installing apps, so you can have a look at what they want to download and see if it's age appropriate, and then allow them access. It also allows you to set screen limits, see what apps they're using the most, and see where they are. However, the app doesn't filter web searches, so you will have to apply your own restrictions found in the search engine settings. You can also set YouTube to a restricted mode, but then they also have YouTube for Kids. Teenagers can also choose to stop supervision but the device will be locked. And Apple has a similar functionality as well. You can set screen time limits, how long children can spend on each app, ask for permissions to download apps or make purchases, install safe web browsers, and decide who can talk to them. And this is called family groups in Apple. If you want complete control and visibility, maybe you could consider some of the more intensive third-party apps and software. There are many similar on the market, and here are just two for you to take a look at. The benefits of these will allow social media monitoring as well as SMS and email. Some other handy tools include the family locator, which can share the location of the device while they're on the go. It's difficult to say if full control is actually the most effective way of dealing with things. There are far more simpler or cheaper ways of dealing with someone's behavior. We must consider trust and communication first before actually opting for more intensive and controlling software. And obviously there will or might be some things that the parent won't want to see from their child. However, calling them out too early may break the trust and relationship with that child. It may come to a point where this software is truly needed, i.e. the locator and the ability to read messages. So for example, you may realize your child is going to meet somebody that they've met online. It's early doors, they're a lot older, and you have serious suspicions that they could be an imposter. If you have broken the trust beforehand, your child may not take their phone with them, so you won't be able to track them. And of course, they will try and hide everything from you. Again, I'm not here to recommend any devices or technologies, so just as another example, you can get this Monkey phone from Tesco Mobile. This is a very tightly controlled kids device which allows parental controls and a smartphone-like user interface. This may be an option to consider for children up until 11, as it gives them that social status or responsibility, much like their older brother or sister.